creating this to give you some tips and tricks for how I created this watercolor in Rebelle 6 Pro. Now, I was following a video of Johannes. His first name begins with a V. I won't even begin to try to pronounce it. But he's a fabulous artist, and he was showing the video in traditional watercolors, so using the real thing. And I was trying to translate it into Rebelle Pro 6. So with that, let me give you some, I'm going to hide the screen. I'm going to give you some tips and tricks for what I did to figure this out. So one of the first things that I learned from George Ireland is that if you have brushes that you love in another medium, so like up here in oils and acrylics, for instance, I have a number of brushes that I loved. So I wanted to use some of those settings and things that I liked so much in watercolor. So one of the first things that you can do is you can right click. So here's the Knife Soft 3, and this was actually a brush that came standard with the program, and I made some adjustments and saved it as my own. So what you can do is you can copy the brush preset. So you go there, now we go over to watercolors, and then all you have to do is right click again and say paste brush preset. And lo and behold, there it is. It showed up as Knife Soft 2. So I'm going to delete that because I don't want to confuse myself. Let's see, we're going to move, yes. Okay, so let's just take a look at this one that I had already sent, which was the same. So there's so much to learn, and I'm happy to share my brushes, but mostly I've just taken standard brushes and adapted them. So I think the most important thing you can do is really get in and learn the settings. Here's a couple that are really key: opacity and water. Opacity just is how, let's just take a shot here at this. Opacity is how light or dark it is, kind of as it says. Let's move it up so you can see how that comes in lighter or darker. So you can adjust that as needed for your watercolor. Often watercolors are a little bit lighter, so you might push that back down, but it's totally your preference. Now the really biggie is managing your water. Now that's the same, I think, in traditional watercolors too. So it's very much the same here with Rebelle. Let me, I'm gonna function delete to clear my screen. Most important things to know for working in watercolor is this button up here, which is actually your water. So when you click on that, what it does, you can enlarge whatever you want to do. I have it on Splats 3, you can use whatever you like, but actually you're wetting your page. So another important thing that you do when you're using watercolor, whether it's traditional or digital, so you wet your page. Okay, now we're going to go back and grab a brush. I like the Knife Soft 3, and one of the important things to do, let me pull the brush creator into view here, is you really need to get familiar with all of these things too. I keep it on pen tilt when I'm using a certain my stylus, and that allows me to get a good sharp straight line when I need it. But you can also use it on pen rotation if you have the brush, the stylus that does that as well. Let's see, and the other thing that's important here too is on paper texture contrast and paper texture strength. You might play around with those if you're getting too much of the paper showing through. Sometimes I didn't like that. Normal and glaze is another thing you can experiment if you want. Let's just try normal, and let's try glaze. So you can see it gives a lighter look. I think I keep it on glaze mostly for watercolor. And the stroke, here's a few other tips and tricks. So if you're not getting enough color, see, you can see this is fanning out because it's into the water area, and this one was not in the water area. So you can see how adding water really starts to create a lot of fun things that can go on like normal watercolor. I was going to mention the opacity here. So you can experiment with increasing this opacity here if you're not getting, or decreasing it to get the right look and feel that you're looking for. So that's about all I think I know to do there. The other thing, of course, that's critically important is your tilt wheel. I think in this case I have it on, now I have it off, but you can, like, if you want it to go up, this starts to send all of your paint in an upward direction as it's drying. I might just keep that on like that for the time being. I'll move that over to here. And let's just try, let me grab my tool here. I've got it at the angle that I want. Let me change the color. Let's Let's go to something like this. And since I wetted my paper, I want to start to show, I'd probably make it a little smaller here. So as you can see, this was my first attempt at doing some evergreens. It didn't really work out so good. So a couple things that we can do. So I have wetted the page, remember, so that's really causing it to really span out. I just reduced my water. Let's try that again. And remember that if you hit the F key, that will stop it. It'll actually keep it wet. Let's see, here's the instructions over here. So you can wet or dry the layer in various, and fast dry. F is for fast dry. So it'll keep it wet, but what does it say? So water is removed, but layer remains wet. So there you go. You can also wet or dry the layer entirely. So you can wet the layer, wet all visible, or dry the layer. So I'm often using Shift D. Right now I'm going to clear the screen again. I'm going to try putting some more water back out here. I'm going to try these evergreens again. So sometimes it can be a little tricky, but I was able to do a great job with them before. So let's try it again. So we'll just kind of get some lines going here. Let me try adjusting color. I like to keep that at a nice 90-degree angle to get my lines. And then we'll let it kind of do its thing. And when we like it, we can hit F to fast dry it real quick. And then we can hit Shift D if we want to completely dry the layer. And also the liner tool can come in real handy here too. So you might try that one as well. And again, I probably made some adjustments, so I encourage you to do that as well. The first one doesn't really look like much, does it? So let's see what we can do to pull a rabbit out of a hat here. Okay, I switched brushes. This one actually doesn't have any water right now. Let me get a little water going. I'm going to reduce the size of my brush and start to kind of add some, what hopefully will turn into the impression of some evergreens. Okay, and the important thing is to keep an eye on what your water is doing. So my water is really blowing out here. I'm going to hit Command. I'm going to go back a little bit and look and see, and I'm going to hit F. So what I did was I hit the back button, which is Command Z on a Mac, to go back in stage. Let me try that a little bit more. I think I like it there better. Let me hit F to stop it quick, and then Shift D to completely dry the layer. So now if you look at water, if you hit the water button, you'll see that nothing has any water in it anymore. So if you want more water, you'll have to go back and add it. So that to me is a little bit of an impression of evergreens. Now, in this case, what I found was, okay, perhaps I didn't control my water quite as good as I would have liked to. I'd like to get a little bit more definition, maybe. Like, let me go back to, here's what I did in Johannes' class, and see how I managed to get a little bit more definition. Well, I had a little trick for that. So let me show you what I do. So this little handy dandy smudge and liquify tool has a push liquify. And I have used the heck out of this in oil paintings and now in watercolor and everything. But if you get it to the right size that works for you, I'm going to scoot that down a little bit, okay? And then you can start to just add a little bit more of a hint where you'd like to have a little bit more definition. So you can go back and kind of control things a little bit more to your liking. Okay. And you have to experiment. Right now I'm not sure this is exactly what I'd want to have, but just wanted to show you the amazing abilities that you can use with this particular tool. So you can go in, you can go out, you can create. And one of the things that this really allowed me to do was Johannes really speaks a lot about creating abstracted shapes. And so if I wasn't happy with what the watercolor did, I was able to create more abstracted shapes out of that. So now let's go back to our watercolor tool. And the other thing that's really important to know that I use a lot, I don't use the paint and blend much in watercolor, I use it all the time in oil, but the blend tool. So let's say, okay, maybe I did a little too much here and I want to blend some of this out. So it's a fabulous tool and something that if you're using traditional watercolors, you don't really have the option for that. So so there you have it. There you have some interesting little evergreen shapes. And just for fun, I'm going to show you another little trick that I learned the other day. So let's see, I guess we'll go ahead and turn this into a transform. Oops, how do I get that lock? Okay, there. All right, so now I'm going to copy this. How do I do that? So copy. Okay, and now we're going to paste. Okay, so we pasted that into another layer. Oops, I need to get out of that. Now I need to hit the transform tool. So now I'm going to transform this by turning it upside down. So I want to create a reflection here. Oh, and if you hit the shift key when you're doing that, it'll hit to 90 degrees. That's a little trick I learned not that long ago. So now hit OK, and okay. So now if you like, you've got a little reflection in a pond, and I'm going to continue to use my blend tool a little bit, and you can you could finish creating your painting and have a whole pond around that. But so anyway, I was pretty excited at what I was able to do in watercolor. I hope this has been helpful to learn about both managing your water, using the water feature so that you can wet your page. The important thing with the smudge and liquify tool, using the push one, which I think is just a brilliant feature of Rebelle. And then also being able to copy and paste brush presets from another medium, so like from oils, some of your favorites. So I think there's just so much to enjoy, so much to have fun with, and it's just an experiment as you go. So I really encourage you to try it out, and hope you have fun. Thanks.